You are listening to MFM 92.6. Move to the music.
It is 6 o'clock on MFM 92.6. My time says 6 o'clock. Welcome to the show. What a way to start the show. Tembalami by DJ Merlon featuring Soul Star and Umonjingo. A big welcome to the show. We do this on Wednesdays. You and I have a date every Wednesday evening between 6 and 7 p.m. On Wednesdays, we are behind the mic and we are in company together. My name is Katleho Litlongani and I am your host for this enlightening and engaging show. We call it SiyakhulaLive on MFM 92.6. A big shout out to award-nominated Vilnay, who just walked out of the studio on Holding It Down on the MFM drive between 3 and 6. You will know, we will know this weekend. Vilnay is nominated for the best newsreader in the best newsreader category, alongside this show, SiyakhulaLive, for best nighttime radio on campus and community. So we'll know this this coming weekend at the Liberty Radio Awards happening in Johannesburg. So a big weekend for all of us in radio. How are you doing? I hope you've been well. The show that we love, having conversations that inform and transform, that is proudly brought to you by the very university's transformation office as well as HR. I hope you're having a good evening. It's the 23rd of November, trickling into December slowly but surely. I've got my producer in studio, Debocha. Say hi to the people. Hello, Debocha Khadebe. Sorry. Let me plug you in. Okay, say your good evening to the people.
Good evening, Dumelang Abshin.
Allah.
But what? Like is it a
Goeie
yeah, is it Goeie Aunt? Oh, Goeie Aunt. All right. Yeah, Goeie Aunt to everyone. How have you been? I mean, I can see you are sparkling in studio.
Debocha, you always pay me the compliments.
Is it a good thing that maybe the award is coming? We are the best nighttime show. I mean, honestly, on any campus radio station by far, I think we are the best.
Fighting talk, I like that. Fighting talk from the producer. You know what we do.
We are coming back with that award on Saturday.
Okay.
By next week we'll be celebrating.
All right. An early
if they don't see me, if I don't come to studio next week, I'll be celebrating. I'll be celebrating.
You and me both, Debocha. Nice to have you in studio. Of course, Debocha is the content producer of the show and the man behind the jams as well. So on today's show, it is a big show. We did say that throughout the month of really November and very much for a large part of the rest of year, we will be talking about the recently released report of the Khampepe Independent Commission into racism at Stellenbosch University. You will know it was recently released, and since then, of course, a lot of us are engaged in the report. There are debates, there are engagements all around us on the findings of the report and what this means really for the future of Stellenbosch University, particularly on its mandate to transform. So we are inviting conversation and dialogue. It is our SU Dialogue series on the Khampepe Report right here on SiyakhulaLive. We're doing this on Wednesdays, and so be part of the conversation as well. Share your thoughts and your reflections on the Khampepe Report. You can find us on Twitter, the Transformation Office on Twitter at SU Transform. Of course, on MFM at MFM 926. That's where we are on the socials. Get in touch with us and also share your perspectives as well. And I'm very excited. We will be joined by distinguished professors today. We're joined by distinguished professor in the Faculty of Education right here at Stellenbosch University. Prof Jonathan Jansen is joining us, as well as distinguished professor in the law faculty, Prof Sandra Liebenberg, who's the HF Oppenheimer Chair in Human Rights Law here at Stellenbosch University. So it is going to be a jam-packed show. We've got lots of reflections, lots of insights, and we trust that you are more than happy to journey with us this evening. I do welcome you to the show. Don't forget to stay in touch with us.
Be sure to like the MFM Facebook page, MFM 92.6, Move to the Music, and follow MFM on Twitter and Instagram at MFM 926.
Yeah, that's it. Welcome to the show. And it is just gone 5 minutes past 6. When we get back on the other side of this song, Professor Jonathan Jansen joins us on the line. It is SiyakhulaLive. Welcome.
Why then, why can't I? Birds fly.
Oh, what a song. What a beautiful song. And did you just hear that? Those birds.
It's beautifully produced. I mean, it's
a big
masterpiece.
Song. A big song. Oh, I see we have...
Why, oh, why can't I?
A beautiful song. That's Eric Clapton. A beautiful song, as Tebogo was saying, beautifully produced as well. Beautifully produced as well. Haven't heard that song. I've heard many variations of that song. It's a beautiful song. Over the Rainbow by Eric Clapton. One more car, one more rider. And that is how we get into our dialogue this evening, and courtesy of our guest who also shared that song with us and said, let's sprinkle some magic on the show this evening. We're joined by distinguished Professor Jonathan Jansen, who's a distinguished professor in the Faculty of Education at Stellenbosch University. Prof, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for this wonderful contribution to the show.
Thank you so much.
And Prof, maybe let me start there. Your story with the song. What is it about this song?
You know, I play the piano, and I play a bit of sort of jazzified versions of things. And one of the songs I absolutely like to play, especially when I go to schools or communities and there's a piano, is Over the Rainbow, because it's a wonderful way of just, and Eric, I mean, as you heard, he is maestro, an absolute maestro. And you feel the music. It's one thing to hear music, but when you feel it, the way you play it, then, of course, it changes you. And so this notion of just thinking for a moment outside our troubles, over the rainbow, away from all this stuff, is beautiful.
Okay, I love that. It's very, very beautiful. What I'd give to also be a part of that audience as well, watching him live. I think that's quite an experience.
Yes.
Prof, we are reflecting, and welcome to this series of reflections as we also look into our university community, as we make sense of the Commission of Inquiry, the Khampepe Report, and start to just detangle some of those elements of the report. Let me start with your reactions to the Khampepe Report and the events that led up to the Commission of Inquiry at Stellenbosch University.
Yeah, as you know, there was the case of the white student urinated on the black student's property in the same residence in which they lived. And as you can imagine, that caused quite a lot of outrage in the broader community amongst both white and black Stellenbosch students, faculty, and so on. And the university's response was, let's look at this incident, but also let's look beyond it. Is there something deeper that we're not addressing in terms of institutional culture, racism, and the like? And then they appointed Judge Khampepe to do, an investigation into what's happening at Stellenbosch. And I was an expert witness in the case. So, in fact, I think I was the first one to be called up. And I was really struck just by how incredibly wise Judge Khampepe is, how incredibly gentle she is, but also how incredibly firm she is about right and wrong and what needed to be done and all of that. And you'll find that balance reflected in the Khampepe Report, which is the balance between firm direction but also accommodation. In fact, some of the critics of the report say it is a bit too soft, even when it could have been harder on some of the key issues of racism. But I thought she did a very good job. And the trick, of course, is now what do we do as a university with the findings? And
I hear some reactions as well from members of the university. Some reactions feel that much of what is in the report is not necessarily new information, but I do think that it was necessary to paint the picture as clearly as it was in that report. And so, what are some of those key elements of the report that the university will strongly need to consider now and possibly in the near future?
Look, one of the things that I shared with Josh Khampepe, and I think it's also in the report, is we mustn't, as South Africans or as the Stellenbosch community, deal with racism on an issue-by-issue basis. In other words, if a student sort of urinates today or uses a bad word tomorrow, that's not going to solve the problem. You have to look at underlying issues, the things that sustain this behavior, not the madness that causes incidents from 1 week to the next or 1 month to the next. So I've now listened to a lot of Stellenbosch students, and in fact, on Friday I'm having lunch with some of them, black students mainly. And it's very clear that whatever we might think, there's a lot of alienation, there's a lot of estrangement, there's a lot of disaffection with the university. It's relatively better now after the language policy has been changed, but it is still true that people, as Judge Khampepe said, black students and staff just don't feel at home at the institution. We need to understand that. We need to do something about that. And so at the very least, and I know the senior management of the university is in fact talking about this, and they talk to us about it, is what can we do in the institutional culture? Do we need to have, more awareness just to begin? Make staff, particularly white staff, particularly white students, aware of the fact that racism is intolerable, aware of the fact that it's not just the urination, that is a public display, of rage and humiliation. But what about the day-to-day ways in which we interact with each other? What about the regard we give or don't give to each other? What about the respect we're supposed to demonstrate to all people, regardless of race, class, color, religion, culture? I'm hoping that the institution will do a deep dive, because most universities, not just Stellenbosch, most universities are quick on the draw when there's a public incident of racism, and I've been in that myself in the Free State. So you can solve that problem quite easily. But what do you do on Monday morning? What do you do when the media is not on you, the media spotlight? That is what we need to do, is to have these critical conversations about change when we in peacetime, as I like to call it, not just when we're at war.
Prof, I want to take you. I've listened to a couple of your conversations, and there was an element that also struck me in what you said, and I thought that maybe I can bring some of that, a little bit of that, to our listeners this evening, in taking back to the incident or incidents that led up to the Commission of Inquiry. You said something that was quite, I think, useful for us to just keep in memory and imagination, that the choice of, I can never use your words as fluently as you said it, but the choice of the instrument of how the degradation took place in Stellenbosch, right? The choice of using, for example, urine or urinating on another student or another student's belongings. And I thought that it was quite, you made something quite solid. And I wonder if you can share a little bit on that with our listeners as well.
Yeah, it's, I would say, a very sensitive issue, because some people got upset, but I don't know why they got upset. Because, I made the point that urine, is the body fluid of choice on the part of these racially minded students.
Yeah.
And that I saw, this as an act of demarcating your territory, but also your anxiety. And my argument was that this happens when you feel that transformation is closing in on you. So the key point there is to say the reason you're seeing these egregious acts of racism is not because the university is not changing. It's precisely because it is changing.
Right.
Okay? That you see this backlash against change. You see this, interestingly, in America right now under Trump, because the demographics in that country is more and more not white, the growth of the Latino populations in big states like Texas, California, but also everywhere. That leads to a white backlash, that you see in the Trump movement. So I think what's happening at Stellenbosch, now that we've reached almost 50-50 black and white students, and the white student numbers, by the way, has plateaued. It stayed the same at 14,000 odd. But the black student numbers are gradually increasing. And in a few years' time, it will be a majority black campus, as is inevitable, by the way, for all our universities. You can't have a country that's more than 90% black and expect its universities to reflect a different kind of reality, But that's not something we should be scared about. That's just something we should welcome. You need a university that is richly diverse, especially a wonderful university like Stellenbosch. Richly diverse by all the things I mentioned before: race, culture, disability, sexual orientation, language, national origins. Don't forget that one.
Yeah.
That wherever you come from, the university must be a space in which you can think for yourself, in which you can live with others. And by the way, you're never, ever going to resolve the problem of racism unless black and white students learn how to live together and how to learn together, in a common language. Yeah. And unless that is facilitated, then you can't learn not to be a racist by yourself. You can't learn not to be a tribalist by yourself. You have to do that in communion. And that is what draws me as a professor at the universities, is the opportunity to be able to get our young people, and indeed our staff, just to talk to each other as human beings. You know?
And we spend so much time, and I think that, as you mentioned about the university, is because it's the only space really where young people get to just come and live together, stay together, socialize together, whereas we who work at the university spend close to 8 or 9, 10 hours of our lives together. So it actually is quite a space. We're chatting to distinguished Professor Jonathan Jansen on SiyakhulaLive.
Yeah, good evening, Prof.
Good evening, sir.
Yes. My question is more around the lessons that you took from the report. What could they mean for programs like the Future Professors Program, the New Generation of Academics Program? So, what do you take into that based on the lessons that you picked up from the report?
Sure. So just before I get there, let me just say something else, if you don't mind. Stellenbosch doesn't have a vibrant intellectual community, by which I mean that when something breaks, you can have seminars and workshops and conferences and debates. I have been surprised at the lack of energy on the different campuses around the Khampepe Report. So when I heard, here's a radio program that is going to have our Marty's students and others, listen, I said to my secretary, cancel my dinner with Mandela.
We are that show.
And I said, this is what the university is supposed to be about. We don't have to agree on everything, but we must have spaces in which we can say, this is a major report. What are we going to do about it? What does it mean? How does it bring us together? You know what I mean?
For sure.
I wish every faculty, we've got 10 faculties, and I don't know what they do in those faculties, but it's certainly not intellectually exciting places in which you can talk about decolonization, in which you can talk about, academic xenophobia, in which you can talk about the Khampepe Report. So thank you to you guys. Huge admiration, for what you do.
No, we appreciate it, Prof.
Now, that noise in the background, I don't know if that's a live audience.
It is, Prof. It's a live.
Okay. So what does the Khampepe Report mean for particularly the academic community, future professors, all of that? Look, one of the most important things about the Khampepe Report is that it points us in the direction of change. Not the student demographic, that is, the enrollments will transform itself. We don't have to worry too much about that, What we really need to do is to work harder on bringing in particularly really bright lecturers, senior lecturers, associate professors, and full professors to diversify, the student, the faculty, the staff, especially at the senior levels, that is associate and full professor. Now that is, as you know, I lead for the Minister of Education, the Future Professors Program. We now about to have 90 really top, mainly black, not just black, but mainly black and women, senior lecturers.
90, Prof.
90, yeah.
Yeah, like that's huge. And
from 26 public universities. And let me tell you something. I said the other day at the talk I gave, I don't know if either of you were there, I said, here is right pickings. Here you can go as a university in Stellenbosch, as you know, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of prestige. You can go there and sort of say, where's the best young black biochemist that I can get? Maybe that person's in this institution or as a postdoc in that institution, and bring them here, And I think the fact that so many of our students still go, this was a complaint you might remember during the decolonization protest, where students say, I went through my entire degree, I never had one black professor teach me. That's a serious serious indictment of us,
For sure. For sure.
And so the Khampepe Report is saying go deeper. Don't just deal with, as I said, the spectacular issues of racism and all of that. Deal with the day-to-day issues that can really, over time, make this a wonderful university. And let me just say this. I know you guys know what I mean, but let me just say this for those of your listeners. I don't believe you must replace a white university with a black university. I believe both in the staff and the students and the curriculum, we need to reflect all of our diversity, you know? And by the way, let me also just say this about Afrikaans. I actually love Afrikaans as a language, but I love all our languages, to be honest.
Yeah.
The problem we have at the former Afrikaans University is there's a lot of people that think it's a white language, and it's not. It was a language that my mother spoke in the rural areas of the Western Cape. It's a language that the slaves spoke, the Malay slaves spoke, and helped build that language. Mm-hmm. And there's a beautiful paper, by the way, you guys must read it, in the Daily Maverick today by Wilmot James, who's a South African but is a professor at the moment at Columbia University in New York. And he talks about the origins of Afrikaans, which is richly formed by all our people.
For
you
sure.
know? And so it's also important not to think of Afrikaans as the enemy. It's not the enemy. What Judge Khampepe is saying, don't use the language to exclude people. You know, use the language to include us.
For sure.
You know, and so on. And I have so many students say to me who studied at Northeast a few years ago, before the language policy change. They say, you know, I would come into a class, I was told I'd get taught in English, and the entire class in chemistry or whatever it was in Afrikaans, and I failed, you know.
Yeah.
But then it's not just the academic language, it's the language in the residences, it's the language in Merriman Street.
Right.
Can we, when we see somebody, you know how people get to have negative feelings about Afrikaans is when they come into a community of students or whatever, and people deliberately, it's like me going, I was in a taxi yesterday, on my way to UJ, and this guy puts on, his phone goes off to Tsonga music, Tsonga.
Right.
Now, on the one hand, I loved these songs because of the music, but I have no idea what people were singing. But that's okay, because for him, this is the only way in which he can connect with what is important. But what is interesting, he talked to me in the only language I understand well, which is English, throughout that, even as we enjoyed the background music in Tsonga. And that's what I think Afrikaans speakers need to understand. Of course you can enjoy your language. Of course you can speak any language. But when we in communion, let's find a common language that can bind us together.
Prof, I think that I also want, you I don't know if you are much of a painter. You said you paint, you play the piano, but I also want you maybe to, as we wrap up, to also paint us a picture. You started talking about it a little bit, but paint us a picture, Stellenbosch 10 years from now. How does it look like?
Look, Stellenbosch, and I mean, if you're a student, your role is to be critical of leadership. So I have experienced that. But actually, we are actually a very strong leadership at Stellenbosch University. I think we have a great vice chancellor. I think he's got a vision for the place. He's not verkrampt, as we used to say in the old times, conservative and so on. So he understands. But of course, like any vice chancellor, he will balance the interest. But I believe he's genuine about really transforming the place. So that part I'm happy to work with. So every day I speak at 3 or 4 places. Tomorrow morning I lead at agriculture at Stellenbosch University, where people are saying, come and talk to us about how we can change. So, I mean, these discussions are now starting to happen because of the Khampepe Report, because people have said. 10 years from now, most of our students will be black. That's not a surprise. So 10 years from now, I believe you would have not just me and Prof Madikizela and Prof Madikizela. I think you could have a lot more black professors coming through this, through the pipeline. Training a professor is like training a pilot. You can't actually do it over a weekend, as Ulysses tries to do. Sorry, I had to get that punch. But it's something that takes time. But I have met, let me tell you something. I mean, I don't know if you guys know some of the young black professors we have on this campus, and indeed young white professors. I mean, I'm so excited. Yeah. So we have the opportunity, and I think 10 years from now, you will see that change. What I'm not so sure about is the curriculum. There, I think we really need to shake up the place a little bit, But But that comes when you diversify the intake of professors. Because
sure.
if the people who teach here got all the degrees at the same university, as at Pretoria where I was a dean, then of course the opportunities will change are very limited because you only know what you were taught. You know?
Exactly.
And so when I see people like this brilliant young scholar we have here now, what's his name, Chepo or Kopale.
Kopano
Ratele.
Yes.
That dude is brilliant.
Yes.
But he brings into the university new knowledge. He brings new ways of thinking. He brings a new curriculum. The more we can do that in engineering, in medical science, in the humanities, in theology, the better. But that's a harder thing to change, the curriculum. And it's dependent on bringing in more staff who come from outside of the traditional university.
Prof, thank you.
And Prof, from me, I would like to thank you, and I would like to say also that I'm interested also in the experiences of these future professors and new academics. And I think it's a conversation that we'll have as maybe off air or everywhere. But thank you so much for joining in and being part of SiyakhulaLive.
Thank you
Good luck, guys.
Thank you so much, Prof. That is a distinguished professor at Stellenbosch University, Prof. Jonathan Jansen. So many insights, so many reflections, and I gather we will be speaking to Prof. So much more in the next future. It is 30 after 6. You are listening to SiyakhulaLive.
This is your favorite campus and community station. MFM 92.6. Move to the music.
When we get back, Prof Sandra Liebenberg, who joins us from the Faculty of Law, also joins us to share her reflections on the Khampepe Report. It is 31 after 6.
This is your favorite campus and community station. MFM 92.6. Move to the music. Be sure to like the MFM Facebook page, MFM 92.6. Move to the music. And follow MFM on Twitter and Instagram at MFM 926.
That's right. That's how you can get in touch with us at MFM 926. And of course, the Stellenbosch University Transformation Office Twitter page at SU Transform. That's where we're at. We are reflecting on the Khampepe Report. So you also join in on the conversation as well at SU Transform. Tell us your reflections and how you or what you make of some of the engagements that are coming up from the report. As a previous prof who's just joined us now, Prof Jansen was saying, we need to create spaces for dialogue and reflection, and SiyakhulaLive is just one of those platforms where we get to engage on such a critical moment in Stellenbosch recent history. And joining us to do just that, so humbled for making time, Prof Sandra Liebenberg, who joins us, distinguished professor, the HF Oppenheimer Chair in Human Rights Law at Stellenbosch University. Prof Sandra, thank you so much for making time to chat to us this evening.
It's a great pleasure, and thanks so much for inviting me.
And thank you so much for your song as well, Prof. I must invite you to share your story with this song, Blowing in the Wind, that we led us into the interview by Bob Dylan. That's taken from Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits album.
Yeah, exactly. No, I just thought it was really relevant to the fact that, Stellenbosch University, it's sort of overdue to realize that the times they are changing and, we can't be stuck in our past ways. We've got to move forward and sort of change our way of doing things really fundamentally. This was in the 60s in the US and we now sort of over 25 years into our democracy, and I think, we need to really reflect on how to move fundamentally forward.
And Prof, your reaction then to, the Khampepe Report and the events that led up to the commissioning of this inquiry at Stellenbosch University. Share those with us, please.
Yes, so I think the two events, that really, obviously the urination, I don't like to use the word incident because it sounds like it's an episodic issue, but I think, and the law dance incident, I think they are sort of symptomatic of deeper underlying issues which the Khampepe Commission report really sort of highlights. And for me, sort of what is particularly valuable about the report, not necessarily the recommendations, but just looking at the testimony of the students, of the staff, of the expert witnesses, etc., is, the systemic issues that actually lead to discrimination, exclusion, entitlement of certain people to behave in racist ways, to other ways, or sexist ways, to other ways. And, I think it shows us that, yes, we have these paper trails, we have these policies, we have the various units, but we're not really getting to that underlying systems and structures that really sort of keep generating these incidents. And of course, since then there's been 2 more urination outrages really, that have happened, which really, sort of signals to us that something very deep has not been achieved through this transformation program of the university.
And I mean, Prof, from the law faculty as well, as I recall, it was, one of the events or incidents, as we can just call it, just for simplicity, the law dance, and also, Tien's tutor from the law faculty. So as a law student, so I'm sure there was quite some reflections that the law faculty also just came to as how some of these events really come or emerge from our own students in the law environment.
Yes, I mean, I think there needs to be much more of this, and I think the testimony of the law students before the Khampepe Report is something which really requires more reflection and more conversations. And I think what is really important, that comes out of the report is that, often the processes tend to be very bureaucratic, hierarchical, functioning in silos. And at least for me, as a member of the transformation of the faculty committee, it really speaks to me about the need to create non-hierarchical spaces where staff and students can really interact and the voices can be heard. Because I think in the wake of these, as you say, for want of a better word, incidents, certainly I know that the student leadership and the transformation officer met with our faculty committee and conveyed certain issues, but not everyone is part of those conversations. And I think, we need to learn how to create inclusive spaces or spaces where, voices can be heard that are not, and sort of interact with each other on more equal terms. And I think for me it's really good that the Khampepe Report highlighted bureaucracy and hierarchy because, all those papers and, I think one of the speakers at the recent Race and Transformation Conference pointed out, sort of being transformed is not about having stuff on paper and having units and offices and everything. It's actually about doing the work of transformation and having a transformed outcome.
I remember that, Prof. I remember that sentiment that, when something happens, oh no, we've got an office for that. When, so then, the university almost then functions through these offices to almost as to just kind of cover up, things. We've got the office, we've got the paper, we've got the policy, but how do we live it up? We're chatting to a distinguished Professor Sandra Liebenberg.
Good evening, Prof.
Good evening.
For me, I'm interested in the opportunities that the lessons from the report offer maybe for the law faculty in terms of maybe curriculum, in terms of maybe, staff, in terms of, like curriculum and teaching and learning and research and, and community engagement in that regard.
Yeah, that's an absolutely great question. The law faculty at the moment has just completed a massive recurricularization of the LLB curriculum, and we are in the process now of implementing it. So it really again speaks to, issues of like decolonizing, the law curriculum, sort of one of the big structural drivers, is the whiteness of the space, the whiteness of the teachers, what is taught, so is it primarily a European version of colonial law, etc. So I think the hope is very much that these themes will run like a golden thread through the curriculum very much. And I think, sort of what you raise as well is, the transformation of staff. Certainly, I think some progress has been made over the last sort of 10 years maybe, but certainly I think there's a long way to go, in terms of the diversity of the staff, but I think also, the sort of attributes, that, the kind of, I was quite struck by sort of students sort of saying, that, staff don't bother to learn to pronounce black students' names properly or to learn their names, that, there's not a sensitivity to socioeconomic context, that people are coming from different realities and so forth. So I think it speaks to the law faculty and the transformation committee really having its work cut out for us, and for all of us. And being sensitive, you spoke about community engagement as well, that as lawyers, sort of issues of, sort of the housing crisis that surround us, the spatial dynamics of Stellenbosch still as a space. Law is meant to be about justice fundamentally. So if we're in an unjust context, then I think, we as law teachers should relate the legal rules and principles and values. And our Constitution is very much speaking to the need to move towards social justice, a more just, egalitarian society. So, I think it's relevant for law as a whole.
And Prof, I'm also just to also just take out from your some of your reflections in terms of the key elements that you found of the report that the university will need to strongly consider now and in the near future. I think you mentioned a little bit about the hierarchy and the bureaucracy, but some of your key elements that the university needs to sit with quite strongly.
Yeah, so I think the issue obviously of some form of compulsory course and how it's designed, around issues of history, decolonization, transformation, constitutional rights and values. That's going to be a key issue to really, it was a recommendation, whether it's just a first-year course. I believe there are models, that could require students to do self-paced learning, that by the end of their degree, they have completed a certain number of modules, which would give them certain critical attributes. So that's one. I think the institutional issues around, the various offices and units charged with transformation. The equality unit is obviously a major issue because it has such a critical sort of mandate. And I think there were some good recommendations, that you can't just have this parallel process between the disciplinary and the equality unit. And, one must look also at some of the harder powers of the equality unit, its visibility, its professionalism, its functioning. The issue of the transformation office is obviously key. Staff training, the SiyakhulaLive program, so I think all these recommendations, are really important. Obviously the big sort of hot potato has been around, and this is something which has sort of been picked up on by certain political parties and interest groups, about the language policy. But if you read the testimony, the way language is still used, Afrikaans to exclude, to marginalize, to maintain the space in a certain way, then I think it certainly does call for, despite the reaction, some serious reflection, on sort of creating a more genuinely multilingual context, and not one where language is used to marginalize and exclude certain groups.
Yes, Prof. So also, I'm interested in the lessons picked up from the report again, to say, in terms of shaping the direction of research, maybe in your faculty as well. I don't know, maybe in terms of your thinking, what is that and what does it look like?
Yeah, so, I think that's a really important question, and I think, there's been sort of a number of initiatives where members of the faculty have sort of collaborated on research projects around transformation at the university. For example, my colleague, Professor Slade, contributed to a book project on visual redress, and the chair of our transformation committee, Prof Sandra, has edited a book and I think it was a really good model, where senior professors work with, co-write chapters with postgraduate students or more junior staff in the faculty. But I think certainly, I think there needs to be more thought given as to how transformation sort of weaves through research in law. So it's not just left to the constitutional law or legal philosophy modules, but in fact all the modules, whether it's contract law, elect law, tax law, all have social justice and transformation dimensions, and I personally think that needs to be something that we research much more deeply.
I agree with that, Prof. I think that it's much like, what you find maybe with people from the engineering environments who say, well, no, those stuff is for you guys, the ones who are in the social sciences maybe, or the humanities. That's more for them. I'm like, but you are an engineer. Who are you designing these solutions for? You are designing for human beings. So you're going to have to somehow engage with that human element. Otherwise, your designs aren't suitable for purpose, because you are not really living with the humans that you are designing for. So I think that there needs to be that connection in the humanities across all disciplines.
Absolutely. Every single subject, you think about infrastructure, and in the context of the spatial legacies of apartheid, and how engineering affects design of roads and wastewater and bridges and where they're located and access of children to school. You think of climate change and the disproportionate burden that Black communities bear of environmental racism, so I think certainly, there's no subject that can be siloed from issues. As you said, sciences are embedded in sort of human communities and have real world impacts on communities. So I think this should be something for all staff, and not left to those of us who specialize in human rights law or in legal theory or something like that.
It's 10 minutes to 7. Prof, we're almost running out of time, but I just want to ask you before you head off to just maybe kindly paint us a picture. I'm very interested as well in thinking with you. Paint us a picture of Stellenbosch University 10 years from now. How does it look like?
Yeah, so I think it would need to involve, it would have to involve a transformed demographics with I would hope a leadership, a staff, a student cohort more representative of the demographic of South Africa. But, transformation can't be, transformation in the Nancy Fraser sense means deep change, so it's not just about racial or gender targets, but it's also committed to, sort of dealing with those structural barriers that lead to unequal outcomes for some groups, and privileged outcomes for others, both within the university space, but also in terms of the broader society, so that there's a much stronger commitment to issues of remedying inequalities, social justice, to realizing human rights for all, that there really is, a sort of, that we're all pulling in that direction, because universities are very precious but fragile spaces, and we've got to use both the intellectual capital and the resources that are there to really make a better world, especially for young people who face, just a multitude of challenges going forward.
I agree. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening and for your sharing so generously with us. I think we're going to be resonating and thinking over some of your insights for a little bit longer. And I also like that you're sending us off with some good music as well. Music also that is also intellectual. So music is also part of the journey. Nina Simone, Backlash Blues is how we sign off of the interview. Thank you so much for joining us, Prof, and making time.
Thanks, Katleka, and thanks to Boho.
Have a good evening, Prof.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers. That's Prof Sandra Liebenberg from the law faculty. She joins us to reflect on her perspectives on the Khampepe Report. This is also her song choice. It is Nina Simone singing us into the blues, Sings the Blues album. That's Backlash Blues. It is just 5 minutes to go till the hour 7 o'clock, and we're out of here. It is the SiyakhulaLive on MFM. I trust you're enjoying the conversation as much as we are in studio.
Move to the music. Move to the music. Right here on MFM 92.6.
The music there of Nina Simone, who sings the blues. That's Backlash Blues. And that is how we wrap up our show today on the words of Miss Nina and on the words of our distinguished professors today, Prof Sandra Liebenberg and Prof Jonathan Jansen. It's been an eye-opening. There's plenty to learn for us as well. There's plenty for us to reflect on and do and also think about. The platform is also growing as we call it, Siyakhula, we grow, and so there's plenty to think about in terms of how we continue to enable conversations to happen at Stellenbosch, right, Debza?
Yeah, very much. I think as a show we are proud to enable conversations that matter within this university, and to be charting the way forward for a future that is transformed of this university, that is inclusive, that is diverse, and that is anti-racial and any other thing that stands for dehumanization.
And dehumanization.
Yeah, yes.
I agree with you, and thank you so much for being part of the journey. You as listeners at home as well, you keep fueling our fire as well, and trust that we will connect even more at SU Transform is where you'll find us on the Twitter. That's the Stellenbosch University Transformation Office, and if you are on Facebook, it is the Stellenbosch University Transformation Office on Facebook. Connect with us there and let us know what you're thinking and what how you'd like to engage with us on SiyakhulaLive. So thank you for joining me. Thank you to my producer, Khampepe. Thank you to my guest this evening. And thank you to you for listening. We are continuing a series of dialogues from various members of Stellenbosch University and hearing their reflections on the Khampepe Report. I think we'll do much of this as well into the next year because it really needs to be a living moment in Stellenbosch. It needs to influence how we work, how we research, how we study, how we teach, how we learn, how we live. And so we are going to continuously be reflecting on this report and making it a living moment in the university. So do continue as well to share your engagements on the Khampepe Report. We'd love to hear from you, as I said, at SU Transform on Twitter. Debza, I bid you farewell, my guy. I trust you had a good evening, and let's do this again next week, right?
Yeah.
It's 7 o'clock. Let's end off with a bang. It is Kwese, the Rhythm Sessions, featuring Georgie. The second from the Music is Love album, and I love you. Goodbye.
You are listening to MFM 92.6. Move to the music.